So how big is the challenge ahead of us? This graph shows us how global carbon emissions have risen over the years. They were still relatively low until the mid-20th century. And these latest figures show the countries that are now the biggest emitters. They are China, the US and India. Well, let's bring in the Democratic Congresswoman from Virginia, Abigail Spanberger, who's on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Thank you so much for being with us. So, given the history of political division in this country, and you know all about that, you're from the ultimate swing seat in Congress, do you see US lawmakers really coming together to make these drastic cuts in emissions that President Biden is suggesting?
Well, I think notably what President Biden is suggesting presents tremendous opportunity for our country, tremendous opportunity for us to make investments in renewable energy and the jobs that those investments would bring, in fortifying our electrical grid, which, of course, would bring jobs and resiliency, and bringing innovations to the space of agriculture. I also serve on the Agriculture Committee. So there are areas where we can find bipartisan support for the innovations and the efforts that it will take to meet these goals.
But when it comes to the world leaders who were there on Zoom today, given that President Bush pulled out of the Kyoto Protocol, President Trump pulled out of the Paris Agreement, how can world leaders trust that it won't be all change again in the US on climate come 2024?
Well, and this is a concern as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and as someone who's previously spent time working in national security. I know that the U.S.'s position as a trusted partner is vital to our own national security and certainly to our partnerships. My expectation is that President Biden will demonstrate over the next 4 years his real commitment to leading on the issue of addressing global climate change, as well as in many other spaces. But I think notably, just this week, I serve on the subcommittee for Europe, Energy and Environment on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and we had a bipartisan hearing focused on transatlantic partnerships and their roles in combating climate change and how the U.S. can be a good partner and what some of the lessons that have been learned in Europe have been. We had representatives from the European Commission and from the UNFCCC, and it was a tremendously informative and valuable conversation that, I would hope was enjoyed by members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. So hopefully that's an indicator of where we can continue to have effective and longer-term conversations when it comes to beating climate change.
We could be sceptical, but let's face it, it is vitally important that the United States is politically engaged in this. And when you retrofit an economy as big as the American economy in just 10 years, that has to drag the rest along, doesn't it, Congresswoman? The question is, though, how do you encourage countries like Australia, that exports a lot of minerals, that seemingly, while you're going forwards, is going the opposite direction?
Well, I think it's a bit by practicing what we preach, as one might say, demonstrating leadership and demonstrating a real commitment here at home in the United States, so that when we make expectations or requests of our partners, those are expectations that they themselves want to make for their own countries. Again, to speak to the bipartisan nature of this discussion, I just introduced a piece of legislation today with a colleague, a Republican colleague, focused on mining standards and environmentally sound practices for U.S. imports, and really putting some heft behind our movement here at home towards getting really serious about combating climate change.